Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Urban County Policy Board, our March 13th meeting. And we will go ahead and move ahead. Rebecca, if you move ahead with the introductions and the roll call. Or
so we're going to just start with introductions of board members and staff. So I'll say your name and go ahead and introduce yourselves and your organization. Let's start with Councillor Young.
Good morning, Councillor Young. I'm District 1 representative on the Clark County Council and the chair of the UCPB.
Jim.
Jim Hodges with the City of Camas.
Cherish.
Cherish DeRocher, Deputy Mayor for the City of Battleground.
Emily Lutz.
Emily Lutz, Planning Supervisor with the City of Battleground.
Marina. We couldn't really hear you, Marina. I'll turn it up. Barely, but I can see if I can increase your volume. Let's go to...
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Marina Ferrer, Council Member, Town of Yamhill.
Thank you. Chuck?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm representing Rod-Ams.
Yeah, Chuck is here for Ron Onslow with the City of Ridgefield. David?
Hi, Dave Scott, City of Washington.
And Mark?
Mark Hersig, City of Battleground.
Thank you. I'm Emily Langston, Program Coordinator with Clark County. Rebecca?
Good morning, Rebecca Royce, Program Coordinator, Clark County.
Michael?
Good morning, Michael Torres, Program Manager, Clark County.
And Janet?
Janet Snook, Clark County.
Did I miss any other board members or staff? Okay, then I think we are good to go ahead and get started.
Great. One change that I would like to make, if it's okay with the group, I would like to add one small thing to our agenda prior to public comment, and that would be to have a short discussion about the application process and some of the efficiencies and things that we could improve on it. So as we have our meeting today, please take the time to jot down some of the notes and some of the things that you experienced when you went through the application process this year. And do we have a quorum? We do have a quorum. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move forward to approving the February 13th minutes. Do I have a motion? Okay, motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Great. And all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, they are approved. And then we'll go ahead and move forward to item 3 on our agenda, which is the HUD funding updates.
Thank you, Councillor Young. So we this year actually do have our CDBG and home allocation amounts in the actual exact numbers for how much we have to award. So we have from HUD this year a CDBG entitlement of $1.55 million. We also have $595,000 of reprogrammed and program income to allocate in CDBG. So that is some funds that went unspent from previous programs. A lot of that is unspent, just administrative funds that weren't used over the last couple of years. And then also program income, which we get from some loans that are coming back to us, and yeah, things like that. So that subtotal of our funding is $2.2 million CDBG. We, from that, have a $310,000 administrative funds, a contingency fund of $25,000, project implementation and fair housing funding of $31,000, and a regular annual homeowner rehabilitation set aside of $250,000. So total CDBG funds to award this year is $1.6 million. In addition to the regular CDBG funding, I'll skip to the end here to CDBG CV. So that is some COVID-related CDBG funding that the county received in 2020. And this is reprogrammed funds. So again, these are funds that had previously been allocated and were not and have not yet been spent. So we're going to reallocate those to other programs so we can get those funds out the door efficiently. And then moving on to home funding, our home entitlement this year is $624,000. We have, oh no, I didn't update the reprogram program income. It's like $365,000 reprogram and program income, and administration is $65,000, and the total home funds available to award is $885,000 with project implementation of $13,000. So that is the update on funding. So I think we are ready to move on to our awards, our scoring and award recommendations when you are. Okay. Michael, do you want me to go through this or do you want to?
Go ahead, Emily. Go ahead, Emily.
Okay. Okay, so you can see the scores here next to each of the projects. Categories we're looking at, of course, are public facilities and neighborhood improvements, asset and economic development, and affordable housing and homelessness. And you can see our breakdown in how we're allocating these funds from CDBG, CDBG CV, and home funding. So I'm not going to dwell very long on the scores here. We have them available, but we do have significantly more funding available this year than we had anticipated. That is because we have more program income and reprogrammed funds than we expected to. And again, a lot of that is funding that had come back to us through our loan programs. One of our big ones is a first home loan program and the housing rehabilitation program. Both of those, when folks sell their properties or refinance their properties, the loans are paid off. And over the last couple of years, with the real estate market the way it has been, there have been a lot of home refinancing and home sales. So we have a significant program income from the last couple of years. So that's why that's so high. So good news here is that we are proposing, our staff recommendation is to fund all of the applications in full that we received in each of these categories. So then that still leaves us with some additional funds. So I'll walk through what our staff proposal is here to do with that additional funding. So you'll see here under Proud Ground requested $300,000. That is $75,000 per home purchase within Clark County. We're proposing to increase our allocation by $150,000, which is equivalent to purchasing 2 additional homes within Clark County. Proud Ground has been a good, reliable contractor with the city, with the county for a while now. They're also our only home ownership program that we have. And so the proposal is to add some additional funds there. We also are proposing to increase the allocation of CDBG funding to the tenant-based rental assistance programs. Typically, we cap their CDBG funding at 20% of their home award. CDBG covers case management. Most of that is staff, but it also goes to pay for other landlord fees and other things that have increased in recent years that home TBRA funds cannot pay for. Home TBRA is very restrictive. So we have things like application fees, other just kind of miscellaneous requirements to help folks actually be accepted into housing and be able to stay there. So we're proposing to increase that from 20% of the home allocation to 30% of the home allocation. And then Second Step Housing. Second Step requested $250,000 in home funding. We're proposing to allocate the balance of the home funding to Second Step. That is a very large project. They are, just as a refresher, proposing to purchase a new construction property and turn that all into affordable housing, affordable rental housing. So they requested $250,000, and they are proposing to finance the project with another approximately $2.4 million private loan. So we're proposing to give them the balance of the home funds. The project can definitely use it, and we see it as a positive to be able to contribute additional home funds to a project that will be new units of housing in the county. And then the last, actually, two more things. Here with Greater Vancouver Chamber and Hispanic Chamber, this is not an increase in what they asked for. We're just proposing to split the Hispanic Chamber funding and fund Greater Vancouver Chamber entirely with CDBG CV funding. So that's the COVID-related funds, and it's required to be used for something related to recovery from COVID. Greater Vancouver Chamber and Hispanic Chamber are both business assistance programs, and we know that even in 2023 that small businesses are still recovering from the impacts of the last few years. So it is appropriate to allocate CV funding to micro enterprise assistance and small business assistance. So proposing to put the CV funds there and then fund the balance of the Hispanic Chamber's request with regular CDBG funds. And then last thing, so this leaves us with approximately $45,000 of CDBG remaining. And staff recommendation is to allocate that to Lifeline Connections Mother's Recovery House project. This is a project that some of you will remember. It was funded in 2020. It's the purchase of a home to house mothers and their children who are in recovery from substance use disorder. And this project is trying to move along. Lifeline Connections has been on top of trying to search for a house. But as we all know, from 2020 to now, the cost of housing in Clark County has really skyrocketed. So from the time that they put in their request for funding, which would have been winter of 2019 to when it was actually allocated, which was summer of 2020, and now over the last couple of years, it's been really challenging for them to find an appropriate property that is within the budget of the funding that they have. So we're proposing to allocate the balance of our additional CDBG funding to that project, which will hopefully allow them to more rapidly make a purchase and get those CDBG funds out the door and into the community. So I know that was kind of a lot that I just blabbed on through. So let me know, board members, what questions you have. This, of course, I'll reiterate, this is a staff recommendation. You do not have to do what we're recommending here. So please go ahead and have a discussion and let me know what you think and if there's anything you would like to adjust.
I'll start off with a real quick question. So what, this is kind of one of the questions that I was going to be bringing up later too, but do we have any specific, goals, like directions? Do we have any document that leads us, like when situations arise like this, how are we prioritizing those extra funds? How are we determining it? And not only that, but with specific to the application, when there are multiple requests for a similar type of thing, how are we, do we have any specific goals that we're trying to reach or policy, you know what I'm saying here, like that's directing our decisions on this?
Yeah, so the primary thing that is guiding both what applications we accept and generally who should receive funding is the consolidated plan that we submit to HUD every 5 years. And then within our consolidated plan, every year we send an action plan to HUD that has the consolidated plan lays out our goals for like number of new units constructed, number of households assisted with tenant-based rental assistance, number of households receiving business assistance, or number of people impacted by like new infrastructure projects. So that's all in the consolidated plan, and then we do, as we break down the action plan, describe to HUD how the projects that we're funding are meeting those goals or are targeted towards meeting those goals. So a big part of that really is when we put out the request for applications. These three categories, public facilities and neighborhood improvements, asset and economic development, and affordable housing and homelessness, are the three they're the three goal areas, I guess, that that's called, that we established in the consolidated plan, which would have been, I think, in 2019 when that was done. So those are the three categories that were established, and so that really drives the RFA process, so that applicants kind of have to demonstrate that their projects are fitting within the consolidated plan goals. To your point about kind of once we're at this point in the process, how we're looking at that, to be honest, there's only kind of so much we can do because a large part of it does depend on the applications that we get. So, for instance, we have a portion of our consolidated plan that calls for, I don't have it in front of me right now, but a certain number of like new construction units. But if we don't get applications for new affordable housing construction, there are different ways to go about funding, but with the process that we have, the RFA process, it does kind of rely on like what we've got in terms of what we can actually fund. And in different years, if there was less funding available than applications, that might come into it a little bit more. With more funding available than applications, it's kind of like all the applications we get, it really generally makes sense to fund. And then, of course, as you go through the scoring does kind of align with what we were looking for, so that as you go through the scores, it should kind of pull out the applications that are like the best and are like meeting the goals the best way that we can for what we have, so the scoring gets to that. Michael, do you want to add to that? Rebecca?
This is Michael. This is Michael Torres with Clark County Community Services. I would just add that the staff recommendations are aligned with the goals in the consolidated plan and the action plan, as Emily stated. So we are trying to, in the recommendations, give recommendations that would get us closer to hitting the goals in terms of number of people assisted with rental assistance, number of homes constructed, et cetera. So, basically, Emily, you gave a pretty good explanation, and it's unusual. It actually is very unusual for us to have more funds available than there are proposals.
Thank you, appreciate that. Are there any other questions from the rest of the group here?
I have a question. I had my hand raised, and I don't know that you can see it on there. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so this is Chair Strosh with City Battleground. I have a question specifically about one of the applicants and their process. For Proud Ground, are you aware of any residency requirements for them to issue money? Like how long somebody has to live here before they're eligible?
Emily, do you want to answer?
I don't know the answer to that right off the top of my head. Katie, can you answer that?
Yeah, sure. This is Katie with Proud Ground, and Proud Ground does not have any residency requirements unless the actual jurisdiction puts that on Proud Ground. And so for our Clark County funding in the past, I'm trying to remember when we first started working, I think the buyers did have to be residents of Clark County, but I don't think that's the case anymore.
That is correct. And
Okay.
we actually had a discussion on this a couple of years ago, Cherish, and the requirement is that the home that is purchased is in Clark County. So anyone that is assisted, regardless of where they started their residency, at the end of the process, they are going to be a resident and taxpayer in Clark County. So that's the requirement. It's not based on residence of application. You're going to end up residing within Clark County.
Okay, but does that limit access to people who do live in Clark County and are applying?
No.
It doesn't? I don't see how it wouldn't. If more people can apply for the funding, it's open to anyone, anywhere, right?
Correct. But I guess, Katie, you can talk to it. I know you do a lot of recruiting, both, in the Portland, Vancouver metro area, and from previous conversations, I know you prioritize Clark County.
Yeah, we do. And so that's a great question. We do partner with local organizations as well as do outreach within the community to ensure that, we're reaching the Clark County community with these opportunities. We found, though, that, sometimes people are living in the county and purchase a home in the county, or one of our recent purchases happened to be a family member of someone that was living in Clark County, and they were able to move closer to their family member. So it's not a requirement, but we do active outreach to try to ensure that Clark County residents are informed of the opportunity.
It would be interesting to see the process that you guys follow for applicants, like how you prioritize, and I don't know what your system is for that, but I would be interested in learning more about that.
Great. Yeah, I could share our waitlist policy with Michael and Emily.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That would be great. And if I could piggyback onto that, I actually had the exact same question, and an item was brought up before us on the county council just recently, and that's the new program that we have that's got $2 million available for similar type of program. I think it's amazing. And one of the questions that I had too was how that list is determined and how people are prioritized, because if it's a first come, first served, it ends up in a situation where those in the know get it and those not in the know don't. And so I would be more interested in hearing how you do that as well. And then as far as the Clark County and residents coming in from outside of the county, that is a bit of a concern for me, and I would like to learn more if we can. Do you maintain statistics? Could we get information from you, like how many individuals are benefiting from the program that have lived previously here in Clark County, and how many are from outside?
Yeah, we have that data.
Great, thank you, appreciate it.
And Counselor Young and Sharon, I guess, and Emily, we can arrange as an agenda item in a future UCPB to have a program presentation on Proud Grounds program, just to familiarize you with the details of how they do the business.
That sounds good to me. What does everybody else feel? Would anybody be opposed to that? Okay.
That sounds great.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, if there are no other questions and comments, I would entertain a motion at this time to approve the CDBG and home funding as described in our documents and the presentation given.
Second. Yeah.
Did I move or did I ask for a motion? Did I ask for a motion? Okay. So you want to move? Okay, it's been moved to go ahead and approve. Is there a second? Second, and any other discussion or questions before we take a vote? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 And are there any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. All right, so at this point, we finished this up. We'll go ahead and move to our October to December 2022 quarterly reports review.
That is me. Hello, everybody. So just a quick update. These are reports for October through December, so that give an update on what's happening. We know that some of these projects have been moving forward even past the quarterly report information provided here. The Battleground project is being worked on right now for the Southeast Clark Avenue Improvements Project. Ridgefield Simon Street, the construction was substantially complete. That one is now fully complete, and we are actually in the closeout process for that project. The Northeast Second Camas project is fully complete, and that project is in the closeout process. Also, so that's great to see some of these projects getting done. Hamlet Park for the 2021 funding is complete, and that project is going through the closeout process. The Camas Northwest 14th project, the environmental review is underway during this reporting period. It is now complete, and the contract is drafted and out for signature. The Ridgefield G Creek Loop Improvements Project was awarded funding, and I've been in discussions with staff with Ridgefield, and we'll be working on the environmental review shortly to get that project moving forward. And then the Washougal Hamlet half basketball court was originally funded in 2022. With the request for funding this year, they've put a hold on the original application, and then it'll be one giant project done at one time. Or not giant, but a larger project with both sets of funding done at the same time. Looking at social service projects, the Washougal Social Service building is underway for the construction there. As Emily mentioned earlier, Lifeline Connections Mother's Recovery House is looking to find a property, and I know the additional funding will help them find something sooner than later. And then the New Heights Clinic project, they're still trying to figure out the design and layout of the project. It's moving from to, I believe, stick-built, site-built construction rather than a modular construction on that. Next slide. For our asset and economic development projects, this is the last quarter of the calendar year, so all of these projects are finishing up the services that they're providing. The Hispanic Metropolitan Chamber, Mercy Corps, Proud Ground, those have all been completed for the 2021 funding that went from the January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2022, and then they are now starting their next year's funding for those programs. The Hispanic Metropolitan Chamber, Mercy Corps, and Proud Ground received funding in 2022. Next slide. For affordable housing and homelessness, the Grand Boulevard project is complete and in the closeout process. Mercy Housing is also complete, and they have tenants in that building. The Central Park Place rehab program or project is has the construction underway. If you've driven by the VA campus, you'll see that part of the building is yellow and part of the building is blue. They're getting that painted, and it looks very nice with the new unit. And then Second Step Housing, they had a market rate unit acquisition. They are working on finding that location right now. This is separate from the funding that they just applied for, so two separate projects. And then our tenant-based rental assistance programs, you can see that Janus Youth for the year was able to serve 17 households. Lifeline served 6 households, and Aspire through Share served 28 households. Those programs are all complete for their 2021 funding, and they've moved into their 2022 awards. And that is everything for the quarterly report.
Anybody have any questions? Great. With that, we'll go ahead and move on. I did forget, however, there are a couple of you perhaps left on here. I wanted to thank all of the applicants through the process for the work that they went through, and I appreciate the efforts that they make and the good that they bring into our community. And I apologize, some of you dropped off and probably missed this, but I just wanted to make sure not to miss that. We're grateful for the work that you do in our community. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and move on to program updates.
Sorry about all the confusion here. So this is Rebecca again, and so some of you know that I hold a couple of different hats in our unit for the work that I do. I work with Emily with CDBG and Home Fund, but I also staff our Community Action Advisory Board, and we are the designated community action agency for Clark County. And with that, we receive community services block grant funding, so don't get confused with community development. And with that, we are required to do a community needs assessment every 3 years. This needs assessment is meant to identify the gaps in services and the needs of households who are low income in our community so that we can understand what those are and then put our funding towards those specific needs as identified by the households here in Clark County. The first step in doing our needs assessment is a survey of needs, and we are right now trying to get the information out into the community so we can hear from as many households as possible. In our 2020 Community Needs Assessment Report, we received 1,655 responses to the survey, which is significant and amazing, but we are trying to do better and do more by finding more partners to make sure that the survey gets out into the community to everyone that has an opportunity to complete the survey. We have 120,000 people in Clark County that are under 200% of the federal poverty level, and we want to make sure that we have a chance to hear from everyone through this survey. The survey is available in a paper copy in English, Spanish, Russian, Vietnamese, and Chuukese, and we also have it available online through SurveyMonkey in English, Spanish, Russian, and Vietnamese. The survey itself is anonymous. Takes about 15 minutes to complete the entire survey. The survey is broken down into 8 categories, including employment, education, housing, physical health, behavioral health, and different support services. And so we are trying to identify what those needs are based in each of those categories. We also this year have included a section on COVID to have a better understanding of the impact of COVID on our low-income households here in Clark County. The survey is open through April 14th through the paper copies or the online copies. So today I'm here trying to get the word out about the survey, and Emily, if you go to the next slide, I'm hoping that you can help us get the information out into the community in a few different ways. One of those ways is by letting us know if you are working in an agency or program that we haven't worked with before and that you're able to distribute surveys to the participants of your program. This could also be churches or anywhere that you are working with people that might be low income that could have a chance to fill out the survey for us. I can provide those surveys in the paper copies in whatever languages you're needing for your community. We also include flyers in each of the languages, and we also include prepaid return envelopes or labels, depending on how you would like to collect those surveys, so that your agency or the households are not incurring any costs to return those surveys to us. Another way that you can help is by forwarding the information that we're providing today through your networks, your distribution lists, by email or on social media. I can provide those flyers in an electronic format, so it makes it easier for you to send it out. Clark County also has put the information out on social media and through Nextdoor, so if you're connected there, it can easily share the information that's already been provided out into the community. The other way that I am looking to do outreach for this project is if you're aware of any other community groups, advisory boards, agency board meetings, anything like that, where I can come and do this quick presentation about the survey of needs, please let me know so I can get out there and try to get the information as far and wide as possible. And then the final way that you can help is by attending the community forums that we're going to have in the late summer, fall timeframe. What will happen is once we've collected all of the surveys, we will look at the data. We actually send it to a consultant who is a specialist in community needs assessment and research to verify the information that we have is not biased and looks for trends and things like that in the data. And then we come back out to the community with the information, and we're looking for more qualitative information about the needs here in Clark County, and we ask the entire community to attend these forums. So I will be coming back and letting everyone know that those forums, when they're scheduled, and have more information about those, but that's another way that you can help us with the entire needs assessment process. My information's on there, but a lot of you already know how to get in touch with me. I'm happy to help with any way of getting the survey out into the community as possible. This is really a large undertaking that we do. It takes about 18 months to put the entire needs assessment together. It includes the survey of needs. It includes the other assessments done by other agencies like the Workforce Development Council, transportation, the health systems, things like that. We take all of that information to understand the causes and conditions of poverty here specifically for Clark County. And I'm available to answer any questions or appreciate all of the help.
One thing you might be able to help me with is when you mention social media, if you could potentially send us each a link to the various social media posts, that makes it easier for us to click on it and share it onto our own pages if we choose to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. What I can do is send out an email that has the flyers and the links.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions for Rebecca? Okay, hearing none, let's go ahead and move on. And so just one item of business, is that correct? Are we done at this point aside from public comment?
Just one thing before we move on from program updates. I don't have a slide for this, but was just going to mention that just in the last week or two, we received our review of our consolidated annual performance evaluation report back and our annual performance review from HUD. We are meeting the requirements of the CDBG and home programs, but we are planning to give a more in-depth kind of overview of the performance report that we got from HUD at the April meeting. So we will just go over that then, so you can all kind of just get a better idea of where we're at with the CAPER and our performance review from HUD. So yeah, that'll be in April.
Great, thank you for that update. Look forward to it. it's like we do all this stuff, and I think it's incredibly important that we look back on how we're doing things and review that and look for ways that we can improve in the future. And this is kind of what has led to this topic that I would like to bring up, and maybe we can bring this back in, a near future meeting and kind of discuss this a little bit more. But I just wanted to share some of the things that I experienced and learned during the application process, and I think I have an advantage. Many of you, I'm sure, have done this one or more times prior to this. This is my first time going through this process, and so sometimes coming in with a fresh pair of eyes can bring some really good ideas and also some really good ideas that aren't feasible. So I will be the first to admit that. So take them what you will, and we can have a discussion about it further in the future. But one of the things that I struggled with was the actual application. Sometimes the questions on the scoring didn't quite line up exactly to the question on the application. And then also the actual question on the scoring did not really line up with the kind of the scaling that was underneath it, like that description of how would be a great, this is a great score, this is a medium score. Those things didn't seem to jive all the time. So I'd kind of like to look at that. And one of the biggest things for me when I was going through this is I felt like I was more like a machine scoring based on the verbiage that was on the application rather than, I guess there was no mechanism for me to try to score based on the community's need or the merits of the program itself, that kind of a thing. So it was more kind of like, if somebody answers all the questions, they get a great score, but it may not necessarily be the program or the idea that we need in our community. I don't know if that makes any sense. I felt like specifically past outcomes could have used significantly more emphasis in the application, a way to measure what the program has done in the past, how successful it's been. And then kind of that discussion that we had earlier about what are our goals and priorities. So maybe you can send that plan to us, and we can familiarize ourselves with it better, and somehow maybe incorporate that into a separate question on the applications or on the scoring. Is it meeting all these things? I know you guys go through ahead of time and make sure it meets those, but I think certain programs probably are better at meeting than others. And also the last thing was, this is a very long process, a very interesting process and very worth the time spent on doing it. But perhaps next time when we send the applications out, maybe it was included in that information, but when I was having troubles finding it, I never got around to it, but a better way to communicate with the applicants themselves, like maybe the people that came and presented have their contact information so we could reach out to them. And that's all I had, but I'm curious whether anybody else in the group has had experiences and thoughts similar or different ideas that they thought for maybe some of the frustrations that they experienced or some ways that we can potentially improve the system.
This is Dave Scott from Washington. I think it would be healthy to look at that nexus between the scoring rubric and the issues that you raised, at least to corroborate what we've got, understand it better, or to make some adjustments to the nexus.
Whoop, I apologize. I had my mic on that time, so it probably echoed for you. So you're suggesting taking a look at the scoring, the rubric, basically, how we score and the numbers.
Yeah, I was just kind of seconding what you mentioned, Counselor. I think it would be healthy to evaluate or reevaluate the nexus between the scoring rubric dynamics and the application questions, even if the outcome is to provide an enhanced crosswalk for us as scorers as we're doing that, or corroborating what's already there and helping us understand that crosswalk a little better, or perhaps it will lead to some enhancements for that. But it can't be unhealthy to do a review like that.
Thank you, and that actually brought up one more thing for me as well. I apologize, but when we were looking at the jurisdictional things, I felt like equity was missing from that conversation, because I think there are certain projects that really are more equitable than others. So I don't know, that's something I wrote down at the very beginning, so maybe I was missing something at that point, but yeah, thank you for that. Anything else?
Councilor Young, when you mentioned equity, are you referring to the infrastructure project?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, well, hopefully if you think of anything else, please forward it on to Emily or Rebecca or Michael, and maybe we can come back to this in the near future and kind of have a discussion when it's appropriate as far as timing goes. I appreciate that very much. With that, we will go ahead and move forward to public comment. Is there anybody in the public that would be interested in addressing us today? Okay, hearing none, is there anything for the good of the order before we adjourn?
I'll just mention our next meeting is April 10th at 9:30 a.m. We usually make that an as-needed meeting, but it seems like we're going to go ahead and do that so we can go over the performance stuff and anything else that comes up as a potential April item. Maybe we can add the Proud Ground presentation to that agenda too. And just to go back to the scoring conversation for 1 minute, when we put out the RFA I think we usually release it on October 1st. That includes the guidance for applicants and has the scoring rubric in it. So maybe sometime this summer we can do another board meeting and kind of go over some of that. We can send it out to everyone beforehand. As staff, we can take a look at it first and see if there's any obvious changes in response to your feedback, but then we can also just have another discussion about that before the next RFA goes out in the fall. I think that's it from us.
Anything else? Okay, well, thank you.
I'm sorry. This is David Washiko. I just wanted to thank the staff for the great work this cycle. It's really nice to see us able to fund all of these requests. That hasn't always been the case. So it feels good to be able to be this supportive out of the program. And I'm sure that the county council will be pleased with the slate of recommended funding and the good work it'll do in the community. So thank you.
Thank you, David. And that actually brings up a good point for me to just mention kind of next steps in the process for awarding the funding is that staff is going to prepare our annual action plan to HUD, and then we take that to a county council meeting in May to have the council formally approve us to submit the plan to HUD to award the funds as recommended by the board.
Thank you for that update. Anything else at all? Okay, with that, we will go ahead and adjourn. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next month.